400 hours forward operating base, Penghu Islands. The monsoon rain hammers the concrete seawall with relentless fury. Thick clouds blot out the moon, turning the Taiwan Strait into a void of ink and water. Inside the reinforced pillboxes, young Marines huddle against the damp chill, wiping condensation from their thermal optics. The smell of wet concrete and gun oil permeates the cramped bunkers. A rhythmic thrumming of heavy diesel generators vibrates through the floor, providing a deceptive heartbeat to the fortress. A lance corporal on the North Watch freezes. The green static on his display ripples with unnatural heat signatures. He taps his sergeant on the shoulder. They stare at the horizon where the black water meets the black sky. A low, piercing whistle begins in the distance. It grows louder rapidly. It sounds like the sky is tearing apart. The horizon flashes white. A cruise missile slams into the outer perimeter wall. A massive fireball erupts, turning night into blinding day. Concrete shatters instantly. Chunks of twisted rebar and rock spray across the compound like deadly confetti. The ground shakes violently. Marines are thrown against the bunker walls. Dust falls from the ceiling, choking the air. Another missile screams in. It smashes directly into the radar array on the ridge. The steel tower crumples. Metal screeches as the structure twists and collapses into a burning heap of debris. The air raid siren begins to wail. It cuts through the roar of the storm and the crackle of burning fuel. Marines scramble for their battle stations, slipping on the wet steel floors. A third missile impacts the fuel depot. Drums detonate in a chain reaction. A wave of heat rolls over the defensive line, evaporating the rain instantly. A sentry on the walkway is hurled over the railing by the blast pressure. He hits the mud hard. Blood runs down his forehead. He struggles to his feet, gripping his assault rifle, and stumbles toward cover. The entire island shakes as a rolling barrage of rockets begins to walk up the beach line. Sand and water geyser skyward. The platoon commander grabs the field phone. He slams his hand against the wall to steady himself. He screams orders over the deafening noise, demanding immediate counter-battery radar sweeps and ordering the heavy machine gun teams to man the firing apertures. He kicks a munition crate open and racks the slide of his pistol. The bombardment pauses for a split second. Silence rushes back in, ringing in everyone's ears. Smoke billows from the craters, mixing with the falling rain to create a thick, toxic fog. The fortress is awake. So 5:15 hours, observation post Alpha, overlooking the strait. The monsoon rain tapers off into a cold, steady drizzle. Gray light begins to bleed into the eastern sky, illuminating the thick black smoke still drifting from the burning fuel depot. Marines stand rigid in the trenches, their knuckles white on the grips of their weapons. The sea is a choppy, slate-gray expanse, partially hidden by sea mist and lingering haze. The smell of ozone and cordite is overpowering. A spotter cleans his optic lens with a dirty rag. He squints. The mist swirls and parts. A dark shape materializes on the water, then another and another. The horizon transforms into a solid wall of steel. The enemy fleet emerges from the gloom. Dozens of destroyers and frigates cut through the waves. Their bows slice the water into white foam. Suddenly, the stern gates of the massive transport ships drop open. Ramps hit the water, engines roar to life. Hundreds of amphibious landing craft surge forward like a swarm of metal insects. They kick up massive sprays of salt water as they accelerate toward the beach. The ocean surface churns white with their wakes. The lead destroyer opens fire. The main gun flashes. A split second later, a shell whistles overhead and detonates against the cliff face. Rock splinters. A Marine is knocked flat by the concussion. He scrambles back up, coughing dust, and checks the feed tray of his machine gun. More shells pound the sand dunes, throwing wet sand high into the air. The ground vibrates rhythmically with each impact. The company commander grabs the handset. He yells for the mortar teams to acquire targets. He points frantically at the lead wave of approaching boats. He screams into the radio, ordering the heavy weapons platoon to hold fire until the targets hit the designated kill zone markers in the water. The roar of hundreds of diesel engines grows louder. It becomes a physical weight pressing against the chest. The landing craft bounce over the swells, closing the distance rapidly. The white wakes of the boats streak the ocean like scars. The invasion force rushes forward, unstoppable and massive. 0545 hours, coastal defense battery dug deep into the basalt cliffs. The gray light of dawn reveals the terrifying proximity of the invasion fleet. The lead landing craft are now only 2,000 meters out, bobbing violently in the surf. Inside the camouflaged pits, artillery crews stand ready, lanyards in hand. The targeting computers lock on to the heat signatures of the approaching engines. The air is thick with the smell of wet earth and impending violence. The battery commander drops his raised hand. The command is guttural. The entire cliffside explodes with noise. 6 heavy howitzers fire in unison. The ground jumps. Dust shakes off the camouflage netting. Massive brass casings clang against the concrete floor. The gun crews move like machines. They grab fresh shells. They shove them into the breaches. They slam the blocks shut. They fire again. The rhythm is frantic and deafening. On the ridge above, hidden hydraulic hatches slide open. Coastal defense missiles ignite with a screeching roar. They streak out over the water, leaving twisted trails of white smoke. The ocean surface erupts. Huge geysers of water tower over the approaching boats. A missile slams directly into the lead landing craft. The vessel vanishes in a flash of orange and black. Twisted metal hull plates spin into the sky. Burning fuel sprays across the water. A second shell lands just short of a troop transport. The concussion flips the boat upside down. It crashes back into the sea, trapping the squad beneath the hull. The barrage intensifies. The water boils with shrapnel. Another landing craft takes a direct hit to its engine block. It detonates. Bodies are hurled into the air like rag dolls. They splash into the churning, bloody surf. The roar of the explosions drowns out the screams of the wounded. A wall of water crashes over a destroyer's bow as a near miss rocks the massive ship. The enemy fleet deploys countermeasures. Thick white smoke canisters pop on the remaining landing craft. A dense artificial fog rolls over the water, blinding the optical sensors on the beach. The Marine Fire Direction Officer slams his fist on the tactical map. He grabs the radio handset. He yells for the batteries to switch to a grid saturation pattern. He orders them to fire blindly into the smoke cloud. The guns roar again. Shells whistle into the white void. Dull thuds echo back from inside the fog. Secondary explosions flash orange through the mist. Metal screeches against metal. A burning tire floats out of the smoke. Then a helmet. Then a piece of a jagged ramp. The smell of sulfur and burning diesel rolls up the beach, choking the defenders. The sea is a graveyard of burning wrecks, but the engines of the second wave grow louder behind the smoke. 6:30 hours, Sector 4, the Black Sands. The artificial fog begins to lift, torn apart by the coastal wind. The roar of engines is now right on top of the defensive line. Dozens of flat-bottomed landing craft grind onto the shore. Their keels scrape violently against the submerged rocks. The vessels shudder and come to a sudden jarring halt. The heavy steel ramps slam down into the wet sand with a collective crash that echoes like thunder. Inside the concrete pillboxes, the Marine machine gunners tighten their grips on the spade handles. The platoon sergeant blows a whistle. It is sharp and shrill. The heavy machine guns roar to life. A storm of 50 caliber rounds tears into the open ramps. The first squad of enemy soldiers sprints out into the surf. They never reach dry land. The heavy bullets punch through body armor and flesh instantly. Bodies jerk violently and splash back into the water. Red mist sprays into the air. A soldier takes a round to the leg and collapses face first into the foam. Another tries to drag him back, but a burst of fire cuts him in half. The water around the landing craft turns a dark crimson red. The noise is deafening. The continuous thump, thump, thump of the heavy guns mixes with the crack, crack, crack of supersonic rounds snapping the air. Sand kicks up in tall, angry geysers where bullets miss their marks. More ramps drop further down the beach. Enemy infantry pour out, diving behind the steel hedgehogs and tank traps scattered across the sand. They unleash a barrage of suppression fire. Green tracer rounds zip past the Marine bunkers, chipping away at the concrete embrasures. A Marine loader takes a hit to the shoulder. He spins around and falls, clutching the wound. Blood squirts between his fingers. The gunner screams for a replacement. A rifleman drops his weapon and rushes forward, grabbing a fresh ammo belt. He slams it into the feed tray and racks the charging handle. The gun roars again. The barrel of the lead machine gun glows cherry red. Heat waves distort the air around the muzzle. The gunner keeps the trigger depressed. He sweeps the fire across the beach in a relentless Z pattern. He chops down a cluster of enemy troops trying to set up a mortar tube. The tube flies into the air. The soldiers drop. But there are too many of them. For every soldier that falls in the surf, 2 more scramble over the bodies to push forward. They crawl through the bloody sand, inching closer to the seawall. An enemy rocket launcher team pops up from behind a destroyed boat. The gunner fires. A rocket streaks toward the bunker. It impacts the sandbags just below the firing slit. The explosion blows the sandbags apart. Dust and smoke fill the bunker. The Marine gunner is thrown backward, coughing. He shakes his head, grabs the spade handles, and pulls himself back up. He fires blindly into the smoke. The beach is a slaughterhouse. Bodies litter the waterline. Equipment floats in the bloody tide, but the enemy wave is relentless. They are establishing a foothold. 7:15 hours, primary seawall, Sector 4. The battle has raged for nearly an hour. The beach is a churned mess of craters, bodies, and twisted metal. The air is thick with the acrid stench of high explosives and pulverized concrete. Marines in the forward trench fire desperately over the lip of the wall, their barrels smoking. They scream for ammo. The enemy fire volume increases. It forces the defenders to duck their heads. Concrete chips spray off the parapets like shrapnel. A squad of enemy combat engineers sprints from behind the cover of a wrecked tank. They carry heavy canvas satchels. They move low and fast. A Marine spotter yells a warning. He fires a burst. One engineer drops, his chest torn open. The others keep running. They reach the base of the seawall. They operate with terrifying speed. They slap magnetic breaching charges onto the reinforced concrete. They pull the pins and roll away into a shell crater. The explosion is concussive. It punches the air out of the lungs. A 30-foot section of the seawall disintegrates. Massive slabs of concrete are hurled inward, crushing 2 Marines instantly. A cloud of gray dust billows up, blinding everyone. The silence lasts for a heartbeat. Then a roar of voices erupts from the smoke. Enemy infantry pour through the breach like floodwater. They scramble over the rubble pile, firing from the hip. The range is point blank. A Marine corporal stands up in the trench. He pumps his shotgun. He fires. The buckshot slams into the lead attacker, lifting him off his feet and throwing him back into the gap. Another enemy soldier jumps down into the trench. He tackles the corporal. They hit the mud hard. The shotgun flies away. The enemy soldier draws a combat knife. The blade flashes. The corporal blocks the thrust with his forearm. He screams. He headbutts the attacker. Bone crunches. He grabs his entrenching tool from his belt. He swings it wildly. The metal edge buries itself in the soldier's neck. Blood sprays across the trench wall. The fighting devolves into a primitive brawl. Rifles are used as clubs. Men grapple in the mud. A Marine swings the stock of his rifle, smashing a soldier's visor. An enemy grenade lands in the traverse. A sergeant kicks it around the corner just as it detonates. The blast shakes the earth. Dirt rains down. The defensive line is broken. The enemy is inside the wire. The platoon commander grabs a radio from a dead operator. He is bleeding from a cut on his forehead. He screams into the handset, ordering the squads to fall back to the secondary containment line. He fires his pistol at a silhouette rushing him through the smoke. The enemy soldier drops. The commander turns and sprints toward the communication tunnel. 800 hours, secondary defense line, Ridgeway command post. The chaotic retreat from the beachhead has stabilized into a desperate holding action. Marines crouch in muddy foxholes, catching their breath as the din of the breach battle echoes from the lower seawall. Thick black smoke from the burning oil drums drifts through the tree line, reducing visibility to a few hundred meters. The air is surprisingly still for a moment, save for the crackle of distant small arms fire. A medic wraps a pressure bandage around a corporal's shredded arm. The blood soaks through the gauze instantly. A low, rhythmic thumping sound begins to vibrate the water in the puddles. It is deep and guttural. It grows louder, shaking the leaves on the trees. The platoon sergeant looks up. His eyes widen. He recognizes the sound. He screams a warning. 3 enemy attack helicopters pop up over the ridgeline. They hover like massive dark wasps. Their noses dip forward. The lead helicopter unleashes a barrage of unguided rockets. The ground erupts. A series of explosions walks up the trench line, tossing dirt and logs into the air. A bunker takes a direct hit. The roof collapses. Wood splinters fly like shrapnel. A Marine is thrown clear of the blast, his helmet rolling away into the mud. He covers his head as debris rains down. The second helicopter opens up with its nose-mounted cannon. The chain gun spins. A long tongue of flame licks from the barrel. Bert! The sound is like canvas tearing. Large caliber rounds chew up the earth. They tear through sandbags and flesh with equal ease. A machine gun team is cut down before they can traverse their weapon. The heavy rounds punch through the dirt berm, kicking up a blinding wall of dust. Marines press themselves into the bottom of the trenches. The noise is overwhelming. "Anti-air! Get the anti-air up!" the commander bellows. He grabs a radio operator by the vest and drags him into cover, as rounds stitch the ground where they just stood. 2 Marines scramble out of a dugout. They carry a long green launch tube. They sprint across the open ground. Bullets kick up mud around their boots. They slide into a crater. The gunner hoists the heavy launcher onto his shoulder. He flips the sight up. He aims at the hovering lead chopper. The tone in his ear is a high-pitched whine. "Beep, beep, beep! Tone!" he screams. He squeezes the trigger. The missile ejects from the tube with a sharp pop. Then the rocket motor ignites. It screams skyward, leaving a trail of white smoke. The helicopter pilot spots the launch. He banks hard to the left. He punches the flare button. Glowing magnesium decoys burst from the aircraft, burning hot and bright. The missile ignores the flares. It slams into the tail boom. The explosion shears the tail rotor off. The helicopter violently jerks sideways. It begins to spin uncontrollably. The engine screams as the pilot fights the controls. It loses altitude. It crashes into the tree line just 50 meters from the trench. The fuel tanks rupture. A massive fireball rolls through the forest. The heat singes the eyebrows of the nearby Marines. The remaining 2 helicopters break their hover. They dip low, strafing the position with cannon fire as they retreat for a new attack run. The surviving Marines pop up from the mud. They fire their rifles uselessly at the retreating armor. The air reeks of burning aviation fuel. A burning rotor blade spins out of the fire and thuds into the mud bank. The heavy weapons team reloads the launcher. They scan the sky. They know the birds will be back. So 9:30 hours, the dune field, 200 meters inland from the seawall breach. The ground trembles with a deep rhythmic grinding that vibrates through the soles of combat boots. The rain has stopped, but the earth is a slurry of thick, sucking mud. Marines lie flat in concealed spider holes, covered by camouflage netting and wet foliage. They press their bodies into the dirt. The air tastes of diesel exhaust and wet iron. A high-pitched metallic squeal cuts through the low rumble. It sounds like steel tearing against steel. The silhouette of a massive barrel pokes through the lingering smoke on the ridge. Then the angular turret emerges, then the hull. An enemy battle tank crests the sand dune. It is a beast of green steel and reactive armor tiles. It lurches forward, its tracks churning the sand into a spray behind it. It pauses at the top of the rise. The turret rotates with a mechanical whine. The optics search the tree line. A Marine corporal in a foxhole taps the helmet of his gunner. The gunner hoists a heavy anti-tank launcher onto his shoulder. He flicks the safety off. The tank's main gun roars. A 125-meter high explosive shell slams into a sandbag emplacement on the left flank. The bunker disintegrates. Logs and sandbags are vaporized. A shockwave ripples through the tall grass, flattening it instantly. Dirt rains down for seconds. "Hit it! Hit it now!" the corporal screams. The Marine gunner squeezes the trigger. A rocket streaks out from the spider hole. It crosses the open ground in a heartbeat. It slams into the front glacis of the tank. Crack boom. The explosion is blinding, but the tank does not stop. The reactive armor tiles on the hull detonate, blowing the warhead's energy outward. Smoke clears. The front of the tank is scorched black, but the armor holds. The turret snaps toward the launch signature. The coaxial machine gun opens up. A stream of tracers chews up the ground around the spider hole. The Marines duck as bullets snap twigs and shred leaves inches above their heads. A second tank crests the dune behind the first, then a third. They advance in a wedge formation. Enemy infantry sprint behind the armored hulls, using the tanks as mobile shields. A heavy weapons squad on the right flank engages. They fire a wire-guided missile. It flies erratically, correcting its path as it closes in. It strikes the lead tank on the side, right between the road wheels. The track snaps. The heavy steel links whip into the air like a broken chain. The tension releases with a sound like a cracking whip. The tank lurches violently to the right. It spins in the mud, digging a deep trench. The engine screams as the driver tries to compensate, but the vehicle is immobilized. "Suppress the infantry!" the platoon leader yells. "Strip them off the armor!" Marine machine gunners open fire on the exposed enemy troops. Soldiers behind the disabled tank drop to the ground. Bullets ping off the tank's hull. The tank commander hatches button up tight. The disabled tank turns its turret. It fires a canister round, a giant shotgun shell. Hundreds of tungsten balls spray the tree line. They strip the bark off the trees. They shred the camouflage netting. A Marine screams as shrapnel peppers his legs. The tank is dead in the water, but it is still a lethal pillbox. The other 2 tanks accelerate. They crush the spider holes beneath their tracks. They push deeper into the Marine perimeter. The ground shakes violently as 40 tons of steel rolls over the defensive line. 10:45 hours, Sub-Level 2, Command Bunker Network. The roar of the surface battle is reduced to a dull, vibrating thrum that shakes dust from the conduit pipes. The main power is out. Emergency red strobe lights pulse in the darkness, casting long, jumping shadows against the raw concrete walls. The air is cold, stale, and smells of ozone from fried wiring. Water drips from a cracked ceiling pipe, pooling on the floor. Marines guard the junction, their faces illuminated by the green glow of their night vision goggles. A ventilation grate at the end of the hall rattles. The sentry raises his rifle. He whispers a challenge, no answer. The grate explodes outward. A metal cylinder clatters onto the concrete floor. It spins. Bang! A flashbang grenade detonates. The blinding white light washes out the night vision goggles. The Marines scream, clawing at their eyes. Enemy special forces drop from the ceiling vent. They move like liquid shadows. They wear black tactical gear and quad-lens night vision. They land silently. Their suppressed submachine guns cough. Foot, foot, foot! The lead Marine jerks backward as rounds stitch across his chest plate. He crashes into the wall, sliding down, leaving a smear of blood. The second Marine fires blindly. His rounds spark harmlessly against the concrete ceiling. An enemy operator steps in close. He sweeps the Marine's rifle barrel aside. He drives a combat knife into the gap between the Marine's helmet and vest. The Marine slumps. Contact rear! Contact rear! A corporal screams into the intercom. The hallway becomes a kill box. Marines rush from the command center to reinforce the junction. They form a wall of fire. The narrow corridor amplifies the noise of the gunshots to ear-shattering levels. Muzzle flashes light up the tunnel like a strobe light. An enemy soldier sprints forward using the dead Marine as a shield. He throws a frag grenade. It bounces off the wall and lands at the feet of the Marine fire team. Frag out! A Marine kicks the grenade. It skitters back down the hall. It explodes. The blast pressure hammers the walls. Dust and smoke fill the corridor instantly. The enemy soldier is thrown backward by the concussion. The fighting shifts to brutal hand-to-hand combat in the smoke. A Marine tackles an intruder. They crash into a rack of server equipment. Sparks fly. The enemy soldier elbows the Marine in the face. The visor shatters. The Marine roars. He grabs the enemy's throat with both hands. He squeezes. He slams the enemy's head against the steel rack. Once, twice. The struggling stops. A shotgun blasts from the doorway. Boom! The lead enemy operator is lifted off his feet. The buckshot shreds his tactical vest. He flies backward into his squad mates. The momentum of the assault stalls. Seal the blast doors. Now, now, the executive officer yells. Two Marines grab the heavy steel wheel of the bulkhead door. They spin it frantically. The gears grind. The massive steel slab begins to slide shut. Enemy bullets ping off the closing metal. A final burst sparks against the locking mechanism. The door slams home with a heavy metallic clang. The corporal spins the locking wheel. The seal engages. On the other side, muffled thuds hammer against the steel. The enemy is locked out, but they are inside the perimeter. 1200 hours. Main Surface Command Trench, Sector Alpha. The midday sun is choked out by a ceiling of black oil smoke. The defensive perimeter has shrunk to a circle barely 50 meters wide. Marines fight back-to-back in the mud. Dead bodies, both friend and foe, are piled high against the sandbags, serving as grisly ramparts. The noise is a solid physical wall of sound, a constant roar of automatic fire, screaming men and detonating grenades. The enemy swarms over the southern berm. They look like a colony of ants spilling over a hill. A Marine gunner swings his weapon, but the barrel is melted. He throws it at an oncoming soldier and draws his combat knife. He is shot 3 times in the chest before he can take a step. He falls backward into the command pit. The company commander crouches behind a shattered concrete pillar. His face is caked in blood and dirt. He looks at his tactical display. All the icons are blinking red. The lines are gone. The enemy is not just at the gate. They are inside the house. He grabs the radio handset. His hand shakes, not from fear, but from the recoil of firing his rifle for 3 hours straight. He keys the mic. Command, this is Alpha 6 Actual. Broken arrow. I repeat, broken arrow. The radio crackles with static. The voice on the other end is incredulous. Alpha 6, say again? Confirm coordinates. Coordinates are my position, the commander screams. He fires his pistol over the top of the pillar. He ducks as a burst of machine gun fire chips the concrete inches from his ear. Drop it on us, we are overrun, wipe the grid. An enemy soldier jumps into the trench. He raises his bayonet. The commander shoots him point blank in the stomach. The soldier folds over. Another one jumps down. A sergeant tackles him, driving him into the mud wall. They struggle for a grenade pin. Copy Alpha 6, the pilot's voice comes back, cold and mechanical. Time on target, 30 seconds. Keep your heads down. Good luck. The commander drops the handset. It dangles by its cord. He looks at his surviving men. He doesn't say a word. He just points to the bottom of the trench. The Marines understand. They stop firing. They curl into balls at the base of the mud walls. They pull their knees to their chests. They open their mouths to equalize the pressure. The enemy soldiers pause. They sense the shift. The firing slows down. They look around, confused by the sudden lack of resistance. They stand up on the berms, preparing for the final charge. Then the sky rips open. A screaming sound, louder than anything before, tears through the clouds. It sounds like a freight train falling from space. The enemy soldiers look up. Their eyes widen. 12:45 hours, 0 line, Sector Alpha. The scream of the engines shatters the sky. 2 fighter jets dive out of the overcast layer. They level out at treetop height, their afterburners glowing blue-white. The lead pilot pickles the load. 4 2,000-pound bombs detach from the pylons. They drift for a split second, then nose down. They slam into the earth just 40 meters beyond the marine trench line. The world turns white. The ground liquefies. The explosions are not separate events. They are a singular geological shifting of the landscape. A wall of fire, dirt, and shrapnel rises 300 feet into the air. The shockwave hits the trench line like a solid sledgehammer. It compresses the lungs of every Marine huddled in the mud. Sandbags are blown inward. The commander is lifted off the ground and slammed back down, buried under a foot of loose soil. The enemy assault wave vanishes. Soldiers caught in the open are atomized instantly. An enemy tank is lifted bodily into the air. It flips end over end, shedding armor plating, before crashing down in a heap of twisted, burning scrap. The heat is instantaneous and searing. It singes the hair of the men buried in the command pit. The air is sucked out of the trench to feed the fireball. Silence follows for 2 seconds. Then the debris begins to fall. Rocks, hot metal, and clods of heavy clay rain down like hail. A heavy steel tank tread crashes into the trench, embedding itself in the wall next to a medic's head. Smoke rolls over the position, thick and choking. The commander forces himself up. He coughs up black mud. His ears are ringing with a high-pitched whine that drowns out all other sound. He shakes a private awake. The boy looks at him with wide, vacant eyes. The commander grabs the parapet and pulls himself to look over the edge. The landscape has been erased. Where the enemy stood, there is only a smoking moonscape of craters. The surviving enemy soldiers are stumbling around in the smoke, dazed and bleeding. Their weapons are gone. Their eardrums are shattered. They stagger back toward the beach in a broken, disorganized retreat. The commander turns to his men. He waves his arm forward violently. He screams a hoarse, wordless battle cry. The Marines rise from the grave. They shake off the dirt. They mount their battered rifles on the trench lip. They open fire. The shots are methodical. There is no return fire. The enemy is broken. The hunter has become the prey. The second fighter jet loops around for a strafing run, its cannon tearing up the ground behind the retreating forces, sealing their fate. 13:30 hours. Sector Alpha, the ruined perimeter. The monsoon rain returns, falling gently from the bruised sky. It hits the superheated metal of the destroyed enemy tank, hissing violently and sending plumes of white steam into the air. The battlefield is a graveyard of twisted steel and churned earth. The silence is heavy, broken only by the crackle of dying fires and the low moans of the wounded. The acrid smell of burnt flesh and sulfur hangs thick in the humidity. A Marine sits on a pile of rubble. He stares at his hands. They are black with soot and shaking uncontrollably. He drops his empty rifle into the mud. A shout breaks the quiet. "Corpsman, up! Get up here!" A medic sprints across the cratered ground. He slips in the bloody slush but scrambles back up. He slides into a shell hole. A young private lies there, his leg pinned under a slab of concrete. The bone is exposed. The blood pumps rhythmically. The medic rips open his kit. He keeps his hands steady. He wraps a tourniquet high on the thigh. He twists the windlass. He twists it again. The bleeding slows. The private screams in agony. The medic jams a morphine auto-injector into the boy's vest. He marks the forehead with a T in black marker. On the beach, the surviving enemy soldiers emerge from the smoke. They walk slowly. Their hands are clasped on top of their heads. They are dazed, their uniforms shredded. A Marine corporal waves them toward a holding area with the barrel of his weapon. He does not yell, he just points. The enemy soldiers obey. They collapse onto the wet sand, defeated. The thumping of rotors echoes off the cliffs. 2 transport helicopters descend from the clouds. They flare hard, kicking up a storm of ash and water. The wheels touch down on the only flat patch of ground left. The rear ramps drop. Rescue teams rush out. They carry bright orange litters. They grab the wounded Marines. They lift them onto the stretchers. They run back to the waiting aircraft. The engines whine as the helicopters lift off, banking toward the hospital ships offshore. The company commander stands on the edge of the breach. He wipes the mixture of rain and blood from his eyes. He looks out at the sea. The invasion fleet is retreating, disappearing back into the mist. The water is littered with burning wrecks. He checks his magazine. It is empty. He reholsters his pistol. He looks at his watch. The fortress still stands.